Before we go on to discussing the concept of the Sri Lanka team and how we think the series is going to go, what are your thoughts? We've discussed this before we were recording because we were clever sausages. What are your thoughts on Lords getting two tests out of six in a summer where places like Durham, Hampshire, Cardiff,
Headingley.
Headingley are getting none?
Don't know.
What's your thoughts on that?
Um, I mean, I just think it's a bit ridiculous. In all honesty, I mean, we've got so many really nice grounds where England have good records, and there's a lot of passionate fans on the doorstep. And yeah, they're all kind of having to fight it out for a couple of spots a year when, Lords has guaranteed one every series. And to me, when we have these kind of summers where, we have two teams touring for three matches each, it always works out that London gets half of the test matches are played in London. So, I like playing games at the Oval. I think it's a great ground, and we do have a good record there. But when you've got two at Lords, we always have to have. I don't know if that's the touring team insisting on that, or if it's the ACB going, no, it's got to, or it's the MCC going,
Mm,
no, you have to have
mm.
games here. It's like, you know, y- maybe you did years ago when, you didn't have the kind of selection of test standard grounds what we have now. But, you know, you've got to move past that, and you've got to realize that there's some really good grounds. I mean, I'm a big fan of Cardiff's ground. That's still one of the, well, it is one of the newer grounds on the test scene. You've got Durham, I'm not trying to be biased, but it's a beautiful part of the world.
I
It's
actually
hosted
can't
test
think
matches
of the
before.
last time that Durham held a Test match as well, which is a bit of a disgrace, I think, if you ask me.
Honestly, I think I might be wrong, but I think it was the 2015 Ashes.
That's no good.
Yeah.
That's not good.
So
Yeah.
coming to a decade where they hold, I mean, I'm going to a game, I'm going to the Australian ODI in next month. But yeah, they get one ODI, they get a, a women's one day game and a men's one day game pretty much every year. But the real money in England is Test cricket. Kind of you've got a sellout for 3 maybe 4 days. The amount of money what that brings in, for a club the size of Durham, which has had financial issues in the past, it's a huge bonus to them. And once again, they're missing out. But it's not just Durham. There's plenty of grounds across the country. I mean, the fact that Headingley isn't getting doesn't have a test match this summer, and Cardiff doesn't have one, the Rose Bowl, I mean, it got mentioned last summer when, the Ashes were going on, when they said that the next Ashes series in England, the most northerly test ground will be Trent Bridge. So you got no Durham, no Old Trafford, and no Headingley. You've got the two in London and one at the Rose Bowl. It's like, if you're trying to expand the game of cricket, one way of doing that is doing it with Test cricket, because they've said about doing it for the 100, but again, the 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 differences in the geographical layout of that tournament does not reflect what the ECB said when they said we want to spread the game. Because again, north the north of England, you've got Durham as a first class county, you've got Northumberland, which is a huge cricket playing county, you've got Cumbria as well, which has a strong league. The nearest, your nearest 100 grounds are Manchester or Leeds. So you're kidding yourself if you're saying you're expanding the game of cricket, and then you're not putting 100 franchise there, and then you're not even giving the best, what is the best series in England when it comes to Test cricket, the Ashes, when you're not even putting that any further north than Nottingham. Again, Wales missing out again. I mean, Cardiff, beautiful place to host a Test match. Ashes Test match. They've hosted one.
Has Ashes history. Jimmy
Yeah,
and Monty. Yeah. Mm.
exactly. And I just think, the problem is, I think you mentioned history. I think that's one of the reasons why it comes down to it. It's the history and the kind of rigid traditionalism where it's like we've got to have one of the Lords. Like, You don't. I'm sure teams touring will be perfectly fine with not playing at Lords and maybe playing in Cardiff or Leeds or Hampshire, down in Southampton. I think they'd be fine with that. I
I
don't
don't
think
think.
every team has to play at Lords, and yeah, it's just getting a bit boring now.
I think if you have a look at Zimbabwe next year, I don't know whether it's at Lords or not, but I think Zimbabwe would not care where they play so long as
It is at Lords,
England. Oh,
yeah.
is it? Well, they'll
It
be. But
is. It is Lords,
but
yeah.
I think Zimbabwe would have happily played in Grace Road or something
Yeah,
like that with the concept that England are paying them to come.
hmm
And it would
exactly.
that get that well, we're getting miles away from Sri Lanka at the moment, but Zimbabwe Zimbabwe coming and being paid by the ECB to come, you could have put that test anywhere and
hmm
just been like 20 quid in you come. It would like Durham haven't had a test since
hmm
2015. Bring
I,
Zimbabwe to Durham, and you know Zimbabwe are happy that they've been paid to come. They're playing England. Like Durham get a test match. You sell it out maybe for 3 days,
mhm.
maybe because you don't know how good Zimbabwe will be. Like it's almost a no brainer. But we have you're right, as in we have this tradition that Lords open the summer, the Oval closes the summer, and to an extent, I don't have an issue with that.
Mhm.
Like you've got Brisbane that opens the Ashes in Australia, and you've got Melbourne that always has the Christmas Boxing Day match, and that's tradition. That's what happens, and you don't really have an issue with that.
Yeah,
But
I think so.
as
Just on that as well. I think also the Aussies always pick Brisbane and Adelaide as the first two because I think we haven't won there in like 40 years. But I think there is also some tradition there. But a part of the tradition is England never win here, so we're gonna start
fair
here.
enough. Yeah, that makes sense. With us, we're picking team. We're just on the hope that we'll somehow beat them. But yeah, I have no issue. I've this is what my opinion of it is. I have no issue with Lords getting a test every summer and Oval getting a test every summer because it's kind of like that's how it is. Don't have an issue with that. But if you've only got 6 tests in a summer and you pick the same place twice, but you're meaning that other places will get nothing, that's where I have a bit of a problem
Mhm.
with it. And I would have had the same argument if Trent Bridge had got another test match for Sri Lanka. I would have said the same thing. I don't see why when you've got so many other places we've said about Cardiff, Headingley, Durham not getting anything for test wise anyway. Um, yeah, I don't understand it, but and you're right. I don't think an ODI is um a good enough trade. I don't think it is. It might be a great game. That Durham Australia game will probably be really good because
Mhm.
you've got a great ODI. You got the World Cup winners against England, who are the previous World Cup winners. So probably a really good game. But I think your point of the money is an important one as well. Lords MCC don't need the money. They don't. They get a
No,
game every year. They do not need to have the money twice. Um, but Cardiff, Headingley, even you know, a test match, 3 days guaranteed selling out. Yeah,
yeah.
it
I,
makes it.
you could also argue as well, just going back to Zimbabwe, that I can guarantee that there's more chance of the first 3 days of I know it's 4 days, isn't it? So maybe like the first 2 days. There's more chance of that selling out pretty much any other ground than Lords, I think,
Yeah, yeah,
because
you're right. You're
yeah,
probably
because you've
right.
got
Yeah,
you've got the. I just feel like you've got such the appetite for Test cricket, and you've got in other parts of the country, and you've got so many grounds fighting over such a limited number of games. I mean, as you said about the opening and the closing of the summer, I think that's great, but in a in 6 test summer, start at Lords, first test of the first series, then finish at the Oval, third test of the second series. Then you've got four who, at least it's given a bit more of a fighting chance to the other, they're still going to be somewhere missing out. But say if you think of Edgbaston, Headingley,
Well,
Old Trafford. Yep.
Edgbaston's a point because
Mm,
Edgbaston, when you say about our tradition, like what places do people want to play cricket in? Edgbaston is starting because of what England have done with the Ashes of the last few years of starting at Edgbaston.
mm,
It's starting to go into that. Oh, we've got to have a game at Edgbaston,
mm.
and then that cuts out the space for other places.
Yeah.
So if you
And
say, all
then
right, well, we've got one in Lords, one in Oval, one at
yeah.
Edgbaston, then you're starting to limit all the other spaces for everyone else.